Okay, so we are going to get started. Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is our first Sidewalk Salon of 2023. Salon is a recurring event hosted by Sidewalk Film Center and Cinema. We are a 2-screen cinema in Birmingham, Alabama. And we're also the home of Alabama's flagship film festival, the Sidewalk Film Festival, which we're having our 25th annual festival this August, which we're really excited about. And as part of Sidewalk, we also have our Sidewrite screenwriting competition, which you may be interested in. I'll put a link to our Film Freeway page in the chat. I'm Jessica Chrisman. I am the Director of Education and Outreach at Sidewalk. And tonight we have Troy Kelly joining us, who he'll get into his bio soon, but he did win the Sidewrite competition in 2018. And we're very happy to have him come back and give something to the Sidewalk community. So before I turn it over to him, I did want to remind everyone that we are recording this session. If that affects the specificity of the questions you want to ask Troy when we get to the end. But I am planning to post this on our YouTube page later. So if you miss anything or you want to share it, it will be there. And now I'm going to turn it over to Troy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for coming. So yeah, as Jessica said, we were in some conversation about, how I could give something back to the Sidewalk community because it is such a great community for the folks in here who maybe are not from Alabama, are not familiar with Sidewalk. I also am not from Alabama. I'm actually from Minnesota, which is where I'm coming to you from right now. Really confusing sentence, but I am in Minnesota. You may be, I don't know, anywhere in the world. But I was really fortunate with actually my first project I ever wrote to win a competition at Sidewalk, and they have been a phenomenally supportive organization for me throughout my kind of early career development. I'm super grateful to them. So if you have not had a chance to check out their competitions or the festival, I can't recommend it highly enough. It is such a warm environment to learn and network and see great films and meet great people. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend it. So a little bit about me. I live in Minnesota. I actually live in St. Paul, the capital of the state, right next door to Minneapolis. And I am not an entertainment professional by any stretch of the imagination. I actually come to writing as a second career. I started my life as a forensic psychologist. Well, not started my life, started my professional life. I started my life as a child, but later I became a forensic psychologist. And I did that for a few years and then decided that I wanted to do something creative. And that has, over the last few years, has led me to the point where now I'm in the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop, which is one of the TV writing fellowships, that kind of the TV writing fellowship style that we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do have a slideshow for everybody. And Jessica, how do you want to handle questions? Because I asked because I probably won't be able to see people's questions coming in while I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, yeah, I can monitor them for you in the chat.
Perfect.
And then at the end, if people want to come on video to ask questions, we can do that at the end.
Right on. That sounds perfect. So I will tell you from Jump Street that I structured this so I have some kind of general information. Some of it you maybe are even aware of, but I wanted to make sure that we're sort of at least covering the groundwork. And this is going to be based on my experiences, other seminars I've taken, the experiences of my friends. As Jessica and I were kind of discussing what would be the most valuable to share, we sort of thought like an introductory session here to make sure everyone has the right groundwork for applications would be a good way to approach it. So some of this you might know, some of it might be new, and I really encourage questions because you will think of things that I didn't. So please ask questions, and we can go from there. So let's see. Now this worked a moment ago, so I assure Jessica that means it will not work now, but it does appear to be working. And I'm just going to start from the beginning. Hallelujah. Can I get a thumbs up from anyone on camera that they can see slides? Oh, that feels good. Okay, so you have now gotten my introduction. I'm Troy. I told you a little bit about myself and my journey toward writing. I should also tell you I'm a drama writer. Some of you in here may be comedy writers, some might be drama, some might like to experiment in both, which is, super awesome. I write strictly dramas, and I tend to, obviously within drama, there's even a lot of different genres. I tend toward probably darker dramas that often have like a crime bent or a legal bent or some kind of like pathological psychological drama dark bent is kind of where I live. But of course, even within drama, there's a lot of room for variation. So one thing that you should know up front is that all of the fellowships that we talk about, except the Nickelodeon one, only takes comedy writers. All the other ones tend to take a variety. And even within the drama writers, for example, there's a wide range of different dramas that are represented. So let's go ahead and get started. I already told you about myself, but there's my illustrious headshot. Mostly, I just want to show this because I feel really good about getting that to tilt in rotation with that film strip thing. So that's really the only reason I'm showing this to you. So let's talk about what we're all here to do. Learn about the TV writing fellowships. And for our purposes, I've actually broken the fellowships up into two different big categories: the network and studio fellowships, and then what we'll talk about on the next slide are the kind of other fellowships and other ways that you can do fellowships surrounding episodic content. So these fellowships on this slide are fellowships that are sponsored by a network or a studio. So you've got NBC TV Writers Program that took a year off, and then it came back this year as NBC TV Writers Program from NBCU launch. These things are constantly changing names, which is like not a surprise because of the changing landscape of media and television. But consistently, NBC has had one, except for 2 years ago they did not. The Paramount Writers Mentoring Program, which has previously been Viacom and CBS Viacom, but now it's Paramount Writers Mentoring Program. That one's been around a lot of years. Disney General Entertainment, I think at one point it was actually the ABC program, but now it's Disney. The Fox Entertainment Writers Incubator, the Nickelodeon Writing Program, which takes comedy writers, and then Warner Brothers Discovery. And I put some question marks next to that one because due to some of the mergers that have taken place with Warner Brothers and Discovery, the Warner Brother Writers Workshop that I'm currently in, this is our last year, but the program will continue in a different form, housed in a different department at Warner Brothers. Right now, the program is inside Warner Brother Television Studio, and next year it will be out of a different department, and the details on that are kind of forthcoming. And Jessica, I want to let you know, I just admitted somebody. I hope that's okay. But he was popping up on my screen. So the details on that are forthcoming. So a little bit, I don't have any like inside information about what the dates would be, for example, for applications and stuff like that. But I want to flag that for you that one will be different in the coming application year. But in addition to these really standout network and studio fellowships, there are a lot of great opportunities to learn about episodic writing from people in the industry. These are just a few. There are many, many more. I tried to capture a few of them on here that I am either familiar with or I have friends who have gone through the programs. Of course, Sundance Episodic Lab is very prestigious. And very difficult to get into. That I believe they rejected Ava DuVernay 6 times before she got in. I think that's the industry mythology. I don't know if that's true. Film Independent has a really strong lab that I've had some friends who've gone through. Outfest offers mentorship for LGBTQ writers. NHMC is National Hispanic Media Coalition, and they offer a fellowship for program writers of Latino descent. CAPE is for Asian and Pacific Islander writers. There is a specific Native American TV writers lab. Hillman Grad is another one that's actually like a similar, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her name? Forgive me. She won an Emmy for writing on Master of None. Lena Waithe, thank you. Oh my gosh, forgive me. Lena Waithe runs Hillman Grad. Thank you, Jessica. The WGA has one for veterans. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. And I encourage you, like, as you're kind of thinking about how you're going to, uh, structure your application year, because what we're going to talk about is that this is a process. This is like not a one-off thing. This is like really discipline is where it's at. But like apply for a bunch of them because there'll be some that are fit for you and some that aren't. And if you're doing the work for one, you've probably laid the groundwork for another. So think about not just the studio and network fellowships, but also these other wonderful fellowships that offer you some really fantastic opportunities. So here is the question: why do a TV writing fellowship? And these are the 6 reasons that I can really come up with. There are probably others that, if we surveyed any of my friends and colleagues that are in these programs, they would have other reasons, but these are the ones that I can come up with. You would think that the number one reason would be to teach you writing, or as I call it here, craft training. Here is the truth. By the time you get to one of these programs, the expectation is that you're an excellent writer. So I say that because I've met people over the years who are like, I just took a screenwriting class for the first time, and so I think I'm going to apply for the fellowships. More power to you, and knock yourself out. I think it's like good practice to have deadlines and stuff. The thing is that the people that are coming into these programs are at a point where their writing is good enough to be staffed on a show, and the programs give them that extra nudge to make an introduction into the industry. The way that one of my mentors put it to me is that it's actually statistically more difficult to get into a fellowship than to get a staffing slot on a show, which is not to be like discouraging. That is just to be realistic that your writing has to be fantastic. So you want to be very confident about your writing first. One of the things that has been incredible for me, because I am outside the entertainment industry altogether. I never had the opportunities to be an assistant like some of my colleagues have been, or like a showrunner's assistant or a script coordinator. I was, I was a forensic psychologist, so I was in jails and prisons. And which actually gave me excellent training in learning to work with executives. But what the fellowship has really given me, and I know for many of my colleagues, is training in how the business really works. Because as you're spending all this time developing your craft, you're not probably spending a lot of time thinking about how to approach the business side of it. What is the difference between a studio and a network and a production company? What's the difference between an overall deal and a first look deal? What's more attractive, an agent or a manager? What do you need at different points in your career? And the fellowship has been really valuable for me in learning those kind of things. Fellowships are also important because they have been a way, both the network fellowships and the other fellowships, they've been a way for voices that have been previously underrepresented to get a foot in the door. And diversity takes on a lot of different faces with these fellowships. But anytime that you look at the fellowship announcements, for example, the Disney Fellowship announcement just came out today in Deadline. I don't know if anybody saw it, but it's a group of 13 writers who are diverse with regard to age, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. There's a lot of diversity within them. But also they're from diverse parts of the country. There are a lot of them, sure, that have backgrounds in living in LA and working as an assistant, but not everybody. And so they also value viewpoint diversity. And when we start talking about what makes a killer application, you'll see why viewpoint diversity is really so essential. So for me, I come from the Midwest. I'm not sort of in the LA ecosystem prior to joining the fellowship. And I'm a first generation college student from a town of 113 people. And I also happen to be gay in a very red state. And although I was a first generation college student, I went on to get a PhD. So those things speak to my viewpoint diversity. And I know that that will not, of course, be everybody's story, but you can start to think about like, what is it that makes your viewpoint diverse that you can share about like your unique point of view and perspective that you're going to bring to a program or a writer's room. Also, of course, it's incredible networking inside the industry. All the programs offer you great mentorship with regard to, spearheading your writing, making introductions for you, helping you with finding representation if that's what you're looking for, helping you get to know executives. So it's great networking. It's also really cool because you will probably become great friends with the people in your program. The Warner Brothers program that I'm in takes 8 people. We are all very different, and yet our love of our craft and our like commitment to growing has really forged us into like a really pretty cool cohesive group that has kind of a lot of fun together when we have a chance to get together. We've been on break, but actually, as we were coming into this, I had 17 unread WhatsApp messages that I had to look at from the group chat. So, like, you will meet really wonderful people in the program. And then I put in here skip a few steps. That one is maybe a little more specific to me or people who are coming from outside the entertainment industry, but I wanted to share it because a mentor of mine said, when I first got started, I shared, like, I'm a little nervous because all of my like colleagues have been like a showrunner's assistant or a script coordinator, or they have like a master's and an MFA from USC or an MFA from UCLA. And like, I have none of those things. Like, I don't have any connections. And she said, you don't need to worry about that because being in this program means that you're skipping those steps. And so so the fellowships, I think, one thing that we maybe don't emphasize enough and should try to emphasize more is that in some cases it can be an opportunity for transition of careers, maybe for people who started their careers doing something else and they want to bring that cool, unique, unusual experience into a writer's room or into the entertainment industry. So that's one of the ways that it has functioned for me. So let's talk about how you are going to craft a killer application. This is a timeline of when applications are due for the network and studio fellowships. I didn't put together a timeline for the other fellowships that I was mentioning. Later, we'll take a look at a resource page where you can look some of that stuff up. Of course, this is always subject to change. And in fact, last year, like when NBC launched their new program, I think people were expecting their applications to be due in like May or June, but they moved it up to March and they announced it with like 20 days to go until the application, which was painful. And I have to tell you, I submitted something. It was not up to par. NBC did not call me for another interview. It was painful. And, it wasn't really painful, but, like because like, okay, I bet you guys are like me. Every time you write something, you're like, maybe this is the one. Like maybe this is the thing that is gonna get me over the finish line, and like everyone says they like it, and what's it gonna take? I will tell you what it's gonna take. It's gonna take persistence because this is a game of inches and attrition. And so, like when you get to a certain level, everyone is fantastic, and then what you have is perseverance. So anyway, that's my pep talk for later. So this is like a broad overview of the months in which the deadlines were. But make sure that you are staying up to date, like checking the program websites, checking Reddit, to make sure that you have the current deadlines. And the thing about it is that like advancements and rounds and who's getting interviews and who's being asked for new work samples and notifications roll in inconsistently. So you will I had a group of friends who were wonderful and all applying, and we would just be like kind of constantly refreshing Reddit and our emails and being like, oh my God, it's got to be one day right now. One friend of mine said to me, who had like, he's like successful and he doesn't care anymore. And he won the Universal feature writing fellowship. And he's like, oh, you'll submit it and then you'll forget about it. But if you are like me, it is all you will think about. Despite the fact that you have a career and a life and a dog who needs attention, it will constantly be on your mind. And then you'll be like, I better check what if just now that email came in. But that is like not super healthy either. So these are the deadlines. Let's talk about what's required. And now here's the deal. Each of these items is not required for each of those programs. But these are the 4 broad categories of requirements. And so I want to talk about each one of them in turn. Disney, for example, I think needs 2 original pilots and a resume and like a staffing pitch and maybe a personal essay. I can't remember. Warner Brothers, my program this year starts with spec script and a personal essay and a resume. And then if you advance, they ask you for an original. Paramount wants a spec and an original and a personal essay right out of the gate. So each of them wants like slightly different combinations of these things. But I wanted to talk about each one of them in turn, because if you are like going to start applying, you will need to have these kinds of things ready to rock and roll. Okay. Although personal essays was not the first item on that list, I put it first to talk about. And here's why. Because if there's one area that people maybe tend to wait to get to work, it is the personal essay. And I am here to tell you that is a fatal mistake. Please don't do it. Please make this time that you're spending in here valuable. If you know no other thing after walking out of here, know that you should not wait on the personal essays. Okay. The personal essay prompts may vary from year to year. They are never more than 500 words. They are sometimes as short as 150 words. Sometimes they are a prompt. Sometimes they are like just a general, like, give us your personal statement. The thing is that you shouldn't wait on them. And what I would recommend as a strategy is to have like a long one that you can trim down. Now and that won't work for all of them, because sometimes like they'll have a prompt and then you can't use it. But to at least be thinking about how you're going to tell a personal story. Now, I want to connect for you why the personal essays are important, because in every one of these programs, they're also, they want to bring you to the program. Okay. Like they're not bringing your project. If, I will say that I've encountered writers over the years who are like, oh, but I have this one like amazing sci-fi script and I can't send it out to anybody though, because like then someone's going to steal my idea. And so like, but yeah, this is the one where I'm going to make it. And here's the truth. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Like it's unfortunate, they just are. Execution of a story is not a dime a dozen. Skill is not a dime a dozen. And you as a person are not a dime a dozen. So these programs want a personal essay because they want to recruit you. They are going to spend all this money training you to be a future showrunner. Like everyone in these programs wants to recruit you, not just to like be a success in the program, but they want to say like in 5 or 10 years, and now such and such is out running a show. Isn't that amazing? Like that's the kind of track record they want. So they want to recruit you. That's why the personal essays are important. They're so important that in our program, and I think this is true at least for Paramount, I don't know about the other programs, every other week we have to come in with a new personal story to tell. And just to be like at ease and comfortable, like telling an interesting story from our lives. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes maybe they're like dramatic or sad or, like interesting, whatever. But when you go out on staffing meetings with a new executive or a new producer, or like to see if like an agent or manager is fit, they're going to ask you about yourself. And you need to have like a repertoire of interesting, engaging stories that connect to why you write the work that you write. So that's why the personal essays are so important. In the personal essay, you absolutely must tell a story. This is an error that I think a lot of people make, that they want to write it as a college entrance essay. And they say like, I was born in Fargo, North Dakota, and my life is a beautifully woven tapestry of interesting experiences that have made me into the portrait I am today. Nobody wants to hear it. Okay, like, I'm sorry. I'm just like, you know what you get from me, folks? You get real talk. Okay, like that. Nobody wants to hear that. It is cliche. It's dull. There's no reason for it. Okay, here's another one. I'm going to tell you one that like I assure you will make 89% of executives angry out of the gate, and the other 11% are just going to be bored. When I grew up, television was my babysitter. That like if it's going to be electronic copies, but if they could print it and shred it, they would. Just don't use it. Okay. Like instead, tell a story. Tell a story about what creates your unique perspective. So I will tell you that in mine, I like, of course, with like redacted information, had a story that was related to a very difficult case that I worked on, and how that was related to some very difficult childhood experiences of my own. And then I brought it back and like believe, and also you have 250 words to do this. Then I brought it back at the end and said like, and that's why I write the kind of stuff I write. Like so you take these interesting things about yourself and your experiences and you connect it to why you write what you write. And you need to do it as a third writing sample, as a way of telling your story. So essential, so important, tell a story. If you give them a Wikipedia entry, they will be bored. So show them that you are a storyteller in your whole life, and that will already put you a cut above. Think of the personal essay as an opportunity to stand out. Okay, like in the example of like Warner Brothers, which they ask for a spec first. In a given year, like comedy writers, there are probably going to be a lot of people who write Ted Lasso and Hacks and What We Do in the Shadows. And you know what? I bet a lot of them are excellent. A lot of those people are killer writers. And so if I'm a comedy writer and there are like 5 people who are all fantastic writers and they've all written a gut busting Ted Lasso spec, how am I going to tell them apart? Like, what's going to give someone the edge? And if you have a personal essay that is powerful and unique and connected to why you write what you write, that's where you just had an opportunity to stand out. So a personal essay probably won't get you in the program, but it can give you an edge, particularly when all other things are held equal. So I know I've like said a lot about personal essays. I just can't emphasize enough. They're super, super important. Spec scripts. Now, I wish that I could see everybody so I could get like a show of hands. How many people have written a spec? Actually, do you guys know how to do the response thing where you like hold a hand up? Will people just like put a hand up if they've ever written a spec script? And I'm going to scroll through because I am so curious about this. Okay, like a few, but not a ton. Okay, so I am glad to see that some people have given this a shot because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be super honest. I had never written a spec script until last year when I applied. And like, that's bad news because actually writing spec scripts, ultimately what you learn in writing a spec script is like the true job of a staff writer. Now, last year, the only programs that required a spec script were Warner Brothers Writers Workshop and Paramount. Of course, Warner Brothers Writers Workshop won't be taking applications next year. I don't know if the Warner Brothers program that's replacing it will have that requirement. I am here to plug spec scripts and say that even if you only ever use the spec script for a Paramount application, that you should still do it. It's still a good practice. You should give it a shot. And actually one of our assignments in the Warner Brothers workshop is you have like a couple weeks to write a spec script for a show. This year we did The Boys, which I had not seen the whole series. I'd only seen the first season, but what excellent training to like sit down and watch every episode of a show and like get the rhythm of it and get the voice of the characters and think about how many acts there are and then like come together with something new of your own work. And so it's excellent practice. I recommend it for everybody. You should all be trying it. You will be super shocked and proud of yourself. Like, wow, I can do this. Like, it's a cool experience. The other thing is that I do want to say that even if you only are able to use it for Paramount, besides being excellent practice, Awesome Film Festival has a spec script category. All of my friends who submitted to Paramount and WB also submitted their specs to Austin. So there are other things that you can do with that spec. That's one other way to get noticed. And I know specs have kind of fallen out of fashion. You know what I just realized? Maybe I should have been a little clear. If anybody in here just 100% or didn't have the space to ask what a spec script is and wasn't sure, spec script just means I'm writing a speculative episode of a show that's currently on air. That's what a spec script is. I'm sorry, I should have said that up front. So that's why I did the voice. When I applied for Warner Brothers, I did the show Evil. I don't know if there are any fans of Evil in here. It's very good. It's on Paramount Plus. Catch up today. It's a lot of fun. So it's just writing a speculative episode of a currently existing show. Here are some tips for writing spec scripts. No, don't try to game the system. So every year, people are like, I bet everybody is doing What We Do in the Shadows. So I'm going to do something completely out of left field and do like a League of Their Own or whatever, you know, like, which is also a great show. Or like, everyone's going to do, I don't know, Hacks. And so let's do Reboot or, you know, whatever. I don't know. Like, I don't know why I can only think of comedies right now because I'm a drama writer. That's bad. But I will tell you, the best thing you can do is write a show you're crazy about. Like, write the show that like you text your friends and say like, oh my God, have you watched it? You know, like that is the show you should write because you're going to be passionate about it and you're not going to get burnt out writing that script, and it's going to be fun and you're going to have a lot of fun with it, you know, and if you like have watched every episode and you have a chance to go back with an editorial eye and rewatch the episodes for things like structure and character voice, what fun to watch a show that you really enjoy again. So don't try to game it, write a show that you're passionate about. The other thing is that you will probably want to write something current. Now, here's the deal. Warner Brothers last year and every year before that put out an accepted shows list. Obviously, that's not going to happen again this year with the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop. Maybe in the new incarnation of Warner Brothers, I don't know. Paramount does not put that list out, although they require a spec. However, usually it's like some requirement, like a show that's like currently airing, you know, something like that. But here's the deal. There's like over 500 shows airing on television. So like you want to like narrow it down to shows that people are going to be familiar with. Like don't pick something totally obscure from Epix or Crackle. Is Crackle still even a thing? I don't even know. I'm not like, that is like not to insult those shows, but those are shows that like fewer people have access to the shows that are on those networks because they have lower subscriber bases. Maybe someday they'll be huge, but right now, like, you know, everybody knows like the big shows on Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max. And so you probably want to like stay, you know, within the zone of like shows that people are talking about, you know, that people are going to be familiar with. And the accepted shows list from Warner Brothers last year had like over 100 shows on it. So you were bound to find something that you really liked. But find something current. A piece of advice that I have been given is find something that's got like 2 or 3 seasons, but not 4 or 5, which in today's TV landscape is actually, it's harder to find something that's got 4 or 5 seasons. The reason to have 2 or 3 seasons is because when you write a spec, you want to make sure that you are writing something that has not been done before and that is going to be interesting and take the characters to a new place that the executives haven't seen, because they want to see with a spec that you can go into a writer's room and pitch something completely new and interesting and different. But also stay in the voice of the show. So, you know, so like just a bit of advice is like pick something that's got like maybe 2 or 3 seasons underneath it. Watch those shows a couple times through, outline like crazy and write a spec. So I'm sorry, I'm like, forgive me, I don't mean to be prattling on. I see that questions are coming. That's awesome. We're just going to keep buzzing through to original pilots. So if a spec is an existing show,
actually to ask you these spec related questions first before you
let's do it. Let's do it. That sounds great.
Well, first, one person is just interested in knowing what spec you wrote for your application.
I wrote the show Evil. It's in its 3rd season right now. Its 1st season was on CBS and then it moved to Paramount Plus. It is, and actually this I could share this because like, what better show for me? It's about a forensic psychologist who leaves her practice to join the Catholic Church and fight demons. So like, you know, it's like a little different from my life. But we had just enough similarity that I could speak to it and I could write that voice. So I wrote Evil.
So play to your strengths.
Yeah, you dang right. Yeah. write what you know, as they
Someone
say.
is asking, what if they want to write a spec for a network show, not a prestige television show?
Absolutely do it. Like, I know that I was saying like Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max. Forgive me. I don't mean to not include the networks. The network shows are absolutely fair game. I would not, because they're not awesome shows, but I would probably steer clear of like SVU or the Chicago shows, or whatever, because they've been on for a super long time. But um uh, uh Big Sky on ABC, right? That's like a sort of procedural-ish show, I think. I will admit I've only seen the pilot. I know that was on the list last year. I just watched the pilot for oh my God, why can't I think of it? It's a new ABC procedural. It's a guy's name, Will Trent.
Will Trent.
Will Trent. That is a super fun show. The Rookie on ABC would be another great one that people could spec, that I know was on the list, and now they have The Rookie feds. So absolutely, yes. If you want to do a network show, get in there and do a network show. La Brea, Manifest, I guess, moved to NBC, but yeah, Netflix, excuse me. But yeah, those are all fair game. Absolutely.
And so I'm kind of going to interpret this question as being, what
Okay.
if the spec is a reboot? This person says Quantum Leap reboot specifically.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, so as long as Quantum Leap is currently airing, I would guess that it's fair game. Now, if you were like, I would like to reboot The Sopranos, then that's a no-go. Like, you want to do something that's currently airing. But yeah, like, if it's a reboot, for sure. And like, look, half of TV is reboots now, so like it's there, it would be really hard to avoid that. But yeah, like, if you are into the new Quantum Leap and you can write something in that world, I love it. Go for it.
And then this will be the last one I ask for a minute, but I do see
Okay.
everyone else's currently outstanding questions. Can the spec script be from any network outside of the Fellowship studios like Netflix? Is that frowned upon? What about treatments?
Okay, so I'll take those. And now I feel like I'm testifying in court, and I will take those questions one at a time. So, but I'll answer the last one first. Treatments, no. That's like, they need to see that you are a writer who can write in screenplay format for television. So treatment is a no-go. Um, and in fact, I suspect the instructions would be super clear about that too. It is not frowned upon to write outside of the network. Case in point, like, I wrote Evil, which is a Paramount show, and I got into WB. Someone in our group wrote For All Mankind, which is on Apple TV Plus. They got into WB. So no, there are no prohibitions against it. I would say the thing that, here's just like a little tip. This is for like the masterclass that we'll do someday when you all get interviews. When you get an interview, you should probably be ready to answer questions like, what shows are you crazy about that Paramount produces? Like, those are the questions, like, at that point, you want to be able to talk about the content that the specific network or studio is producing. But no, for specs, pretty much everything is fair game as long as it's currently airing. And I would encourage you to find something that's that people are familiar with.
That's all for now.
Okay, sorry. Please forgive that awkward silence. I'm sure Jessica will edit that out for the fantastic YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm going to pick up with original pilots. Original pilots are certainly more common in today's industry marketplace. So everyone wants to see like your original voice. Every one of the fellowships at some point in the application is going to ask for an original pilot. And in the case of Disney, they ask for two. So you have to have like some very strong writing samples. Here are some things, here are just some tips that I have for you. First off, be truly original. You know, the original that I wrote this year was, it's like a law enforcement-y legal kind of thing, but it focuses on a branch of law enforcement that we don't see very often. And it has a gay lead character, and he's fighting a white supremacist death cult. So like, like, yeah, like you're going to take something that like you've seen, like, yeah, there are a lot of shows about lawyers and doctors and cops on TV because they provide a natural engine. Um, but you can take something that like we've maybe seen a little bit before, but then do something really original with it that can show your unique voice. Here's the deal. I will be super upfront with you all and share with you a lesson that I got a couple years ago that changed my approach to some of my writing. For a long time, I was like, ugh, I don't want to write a show about a gay forensic psychologist. Wah. Like, I have range. I'm an artist. And guess what? Executives don't care. Okay. Like, at least not at first. Maybe one day when I'm super famous, they're like, what would you like to do now? And I'll be like, I'm sure Kevin Feige just can't wait to have me write the X-Men reboot or something. Um, but when you are trying to break in, you want to connect your personal experience to your work as much as possible. And so for like executives being able to say, oh, yeah, he's that gay forensic psychologist. We never met one of those before. And he's got that show about a gay forensic psychologist. Here we go, folks. I mean, like, that's the kind of, like, that is the calling card you need. And like, to the executives' credit, they meet 150 writers a week. I mean, like, so if like, look, if you can find 3 adjectives that make you stand out, hallelujah. All right. So try to connect it to your personal experience as much as possible. Now, and that's what I mean about demonstrating your unique voice. Now, my partner and I were talking about this presentation, and he reminded me of an experience that I had with the original pilot that I submitted this year, because I was told by, like, I bet everyone in here is aware that there are like coaching services that you can use and, like pay for notes and stuff. And one coaching session I was in that was extremely expensive. I like shudder to think back to how much I paid for that. Um, the individual said to me, of the original pilot I wrote, you should not send that. It's an absolute turnoff to executives. That content is so dark, no one's going to be interested. And that person wasn't trying to hurt me. I assure you that person believed they were helping me. And I was like really bummed out because I was super proud of that pilot. I really believed in it. I thought it had excellent emotion. I thought like I really had, and like I had a bunch of readers to make sure I was handling stuff carefully and sensitively, but also like emotionally honestly. To say nothing of the fact, like I kind of understand criminals because is sort of my background. So like I felt like really strongly that I had landed the plane there. And I talked to other mentors and they were like, look, this is an excellent sample. You're right. That person that said that is right. Like this might turn some people off. But do you want to be known for writing something that's watered down or something that's really powerful and unique to you? And so that is the project that I submitted, and it's the project that got me into Warner Brothers. And so when I was in my interview, I asked the 3 executives who were interviewing me. They were, they get to the point in the interview where they're like, do you have any questions for us? And I was like, well, I don't like ever get to talk to executives. So I'm just curious what you guys thought of that script because like I was really nervous about submitting it. And one of the executives, they liked it. Um, but one of the executives had something really smart to say about it where I was like, okay, yeah, obviously. She was like, look, you're not trying to sell this to HBO. You are trying to show us that you're a great writer. And if that's the assignment, then you nailed it. Like now, like an executive at HBO who's looking to develop a new show might be like, whoa, that is heavy subject matter for 8 episodes a season for 5 seasons. Like, we got to really think about who is our audience and is that going to be difficult stuff for our audience to watch. But if you're just trying to show that you're a great writer, boom, do that. Don't worry about trends. Don't follow trends. Like, do you and do what feels honest and authentic to you. And then I beseech you, polish that script until you can see your reflection in it. Send it to friends. Send it to someone that you know is actively hostile to you to find typos. Okay. Because typos will, and then by the way, after you submit it, don't ever look at that script again. Because you will find a typo on the first page and you'll want to pitch yourself off a bridge. But barring that, like find people you trust to help you polish. So, okay, I'm going to keep going because, of course, I'm being long-winded. Resumes, super short here. Here's the thing I want everyone to know. Having industry experience is going to help you, okay? But not having it doesn't kill you. That's what happened with me. I'm not from the industry and I got in. If you look at the list of the 13 people that got into the Disney program, many of them had industry experience, but not all of them. And so this is a way in, okay, for some people. And if you don't have industry experience, put in all the writing classes that you've done. Put in all of the things that you've been doing outside of the industry to try to break in, and do highlight your accomplishments. Talk about how awesome you are at your current job. Maybe you do something interesting or unique that other people don't have access to, and your experience is super valuable. So put that in there. My whole, they limit it to 2 pages. My whole thing is about being a forensic psychologist because that's all I can talk about is my jobs, And then I have a little blurb I took some writing classes and I won a couple competitions, but that's at the end because the thing where I can actually highlight my accomplishments is with my career. And so if that's you, highlight those accomplishments. All right. Now let's talk about tips and resources. So here's a harsh reality. These are the acceptance rates by program for Paramount, Warner Brothers, and Disney. Note that none of them are more than 0.5%. It is really hard to get in. That is not meant to discourage you. That's just a reality check because the moment is going to come where perhaps you apply and you don't get in and you feel like, oh, why do I even try? And there are good reasons to keep trying. Number one, I'm going to tell you that in my program, there are people who interviewed more than one time. I know a guy who applied 7 times before he got in at Warner. I know a woman from Disney who applied 6 times before she got in. So if you don't get in, keep applying, okay? It is hard getting in and it hurts to be rejected, but it's still worth it to apply. Don't let the numbers game fool you because having a deadline will just help you get things done. If you are like me and you have nothing really ahead of you, you're like, I'd love to write a new script, but there's no date attached to it. Man, my house can get real clean right around those times. Okay, my dog can learn 5 new tricks that week. But if I have a deadline, then it keeps me moving toward it. So just having the deadlines is helpful. You may build a great team around you in the process. I don't know how many of you are in writing groups. I hope many of you are. There are online writing groups. There are writing groups in every community. If you use the Meetup app, you find a community and find people you trust to give you notes. Make friends doing it. Look at good scripts and bad scripts so you get an idea what you want to have in your script. So in the process of applying, you may build a great team around you. You may also find an unexpected champion for your work. A friend of mine who is on the board of Sundance now, the Sundance Film Festival, when he was starting out, he applied for their producer's lab, I think, and he didn't get in. And he didn't get in, and he didn't get in. He was very dejected. But then after a few years, he kept not getting in. But then someone who was on their jury reached out to him and said, this just isn't a fit for the kind of thing that we are doing here, but I love your work and I want to make an introduction for you. And that changed his life. So there are prominent people who are reading these samples. And so you may unexpectedly find a champion for your work and a door might open that you never even knew. So you may be surprised where this process leads you. You'll get inspired for a new script. You'll grow as a writer. So yeah, the odds are against all of us every time. That is an unfortunate reality. But just because just because it is hard to get into the program doesn't mean that you're not learning and doing tremendous things while you're working on those scripts and those applications. And if at first you don't get in, keep applying, apply again. As I said, I know people have applied 6 and 7 times. People have interviewed 2 and 3 times. Who are so close to it that they interview 3 times and 2 times they get a call that's sorry, not this year. Oh my gosh, how can you keep going? But it is that perseverance that will pay off for you. The programs track applications over time. They maintain databases of the people who are applying. They all have internal score sheets. They love seeing someone who's like work gets scored higher and higher and higher year after year. They love that because that says that you keep working at it. One thing that you should know is that you're applying from year to year. You should always have new samples. Always make sure that you're submitting something new. You want to show the program that you are continually, consistently submitting or working on new stuff. Some general application tips. Read and reread and reread the application instructions. I know from colleagues who have been in the selection process for various fellowships that some of these fellowships end up eliminating literally hundreds of people who just don't follow the instructions, who just submit the originals but not the personal statements, who don't submit the signature page for the releases. Absolutely 1,000,000% read and reread and reread those instructions. Frankly, I'm convinced that like Disney has things in theirs like that are purposeful to trip you up. I'm kind of kidding, but like they have a very specific naming convention for their files. And I am sure that there are people that don't do that. And they're like, man, if you can't follow that, like how can we expect you to follow something big? You know? So just make sure you're rereading those instructions. Get notes on everything. That means get notes on your scripts, on your resume, on your personal statements, and if possible, get notes from multiple sources because different people are going to see different things. Have someone you really trust proof for typos and maybe a couple someone's. And here's the deal. I have this very ambivalent relationship about talking about typos because I also occasionally have them. We all do. It's just how it works. We're working fast. We're typing fast. Our brain moves faster than our fingers. Yet, for some executives, it is such a hangup that it can really hurt you. So, if you know, once in a while, it's going to happen. It's life. But as much of that as you can remove, you absolutely should be trying to do that. And then the other thing I want to say is make sure you start early. Like, if you are going to be applying for fellowships this year, you should be working on your applications right now. Because you know, like March is going to come around super fast, and then you'll be like, but the next one's not till May 1st, and that will also come around super fast. So it should be something that you're probably dedicating some time to every week to make sure that you're getting your stuff done. You absolutely want to start early, especially because like I will just tell you, I didn't start quite early enough last year because I expected NBC would be in May. And then, oh, look, it's February 1st and I am nowhere near ready for NBC. And I'm like submitting something that just isn't strong enough, you know? So I think December, January is the ideal time to get started. Okay, here are some great resources. Many of you maybe are familiar with Reddit/TV writing. That is a wonderful subreddit. The individuals who run that are so generous with feedback and posting information. It's a lively community and it's a great way to get updates on when stuff is due and you know all that kind of stuff. So follow that if you don't already. And
Can I
then
get a hand raise on how many people found out about this through that subreddit?
all right, I see a couple right on.
Yay.
Yes, I love that subreddit. I will tell you that that is one where like I had a few like three friends and we would just every day be texting like, have you seen anything on Reddit? Because like that's where like a lot of people go to post stuff. The other one that's really good is the LA TV Writers Facebook group. I know the guys that run that one. They are great individuals. One of them went through the Universal Feature Program. One of them went through the Disney program. They're wonderful and generous with their advice. There's a very lively community there too. So it's a you have to like join it, however that works on Facebook. But I super recommend that one too. And with that, let's do questions. And then I want to tell you all that I put my email address here. Please feel free to reach out, particularly for like consultations on personal essays, or if you need me to clarify anything, please do that. You will find that TV writer people actually tend to be super generous. and like, you know, to an appropriate extent about like replying to their emails. I've been shocked by the cold emails I've sent people where they actually reply. And so, you know, please use that and reach out as you would like to. And with that, I will take questions, Jessica, if
Okay,
that's time.
so I'll just go through the outstanding ones in the chat, and then if people
Okay,
want to come on mic, we can do that. Okay,
right
so
on.
the first one is the WBD active this year, 2023, or was 22 the last year?
The year that I'm in right now is the last year. So but here's what I want to clarify. It is the last year for the Warner Brothers TV Writers Workshop. There is a new iteration in Warner Brothers that I believe will be announced. I don't have like an inside track on that. I just know that like the program that I'm in that's housed in the Warner Brothers television studio, this is our last year. And then I believe there will be something else from Warner Brothers housed in a different department for the 2023 application season, I think. But keep an eye on deadline for announcements and keep an eye, you know, on like those groups because people post the articles about it and when stuff opens up.
Okay, this person's question is about original pilots. I hear you on not being stingy with ideas. So how do you share actual scripts, not just ideas, and also protect your IP?
Well, okay, so I will tell you, I am not a copyright attorney, but here's just the truth. Like, anytime you write something down in a fixed form, it is copyrighted. Um, Copyright just means like you created it and it can be traced back to you for credit. Um, you can register with the WGA for, I think it's like $20 per script. That's an added layer of copyright protection. You can also register with the US Copyright Office, and that's not the technical name for it, but you can like, you know, get a copy written too. The thing is that the advice that I've, you know, heard around is that like it is so much more costly for an executive or a studio to like steal your work and then get sued for it than it would be for them just to buy it. So, you know, like I really think, you know, I would say like I would say here's what I will tell you. For me personally, I don't worry about it at all. Because I really know that ideas are, you know, there are a lot of ideas out there and it's about the person, the writer, and the execution. But then if you want added layers of protection, the WGA and the Copyright Office can offer that to you.
Okay. Someone is asking, do you happen to know the age range of the people in your WB program this year?
Indeed, I do. You know, so age is something that always comes up because often like people are coming from a second career or coming from a first career into a second career. I'm in my 30s. The people in our program are in their late 20s to 40s. I know that sometimes the program in like I'm aware of an individual who I want to say did the Disney program in her late 40s and maybe like when she turned 50. So there is definitely a range. And I think I will tell you that the programs love people with life experience. So don't let don't let your age, if this is a question about ageism, which I guess I'm interpreting it as because that's the question that I've heard before in these kinds of formats, don't let your age be a stumbling block because the programs love people with a lot of lived experience to draw upon.
Do you know, for the people who have applied several times and then finally got in, do you know what types of changes they made that finally got them over the hump?
Well, I mean, the honest answer is I don't. I will say that like the people that I know the best who like applied a few times and got in, what I know about them is that they are committed to their craft. And so they're people who like never stop taking classes, never stop reading books about writing, write 2 new pilots a year without thinking about it, maybe 3 if they're feeling super ambitious. You know, like So they're people who are committed to constantly developing their craft. And the thing to keep in mind is that it's a game of inches at the end of this, like, because everyone is going to be a really good writer, um, so it's like whatever you can do to inch over the finish line, whether that's another class or more consultations or more notes or, whatever. But I think the best answer I can give is staying committed to their craft.
And do you think TV fellowships are useful for people whose long-term goals are to create a serious indie feature film?
Um, I mean, so I'll tell you this, like, to the extent that you can do a lot of networking, sure. But if you are looking to do features, then TV writing fellowships probably aren't. And here's why I say that. I mean, look, I think TV writing fellowships are awesome, but you're going to learn to be a TV writer, which means, like, working collaboratively with people. Whereas, like, if you're writing and directing indie features, you probably are kind of solitary and working on your own. And so that's just a different set of skills. So I would say that's, if it were me, that's not a path I would take. And the programs are interested in training people who want to work in TV, who thrive in a collaborative setting. So, like, I will tell you that I come from a psychology background. Being a therapist was never great for me because that's very solitary work. It's like one-on-one all the time. But being a forensic psychologist, you're part of a trial team and you do a lot of consultation. It's more of a team sport, and that was a better fit for me. And in the same way, TV writing is a better fit for me because of the collaboration versus the individual work.
Great. I think this question is in reference to the LA TV writer Facebook group you mentioned, and they just want to know, is that beneficial even if you don't live in LA?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, I mean, like, I don't know why they call it LA TV writers, because yeah, I mean, all the stuff in there is like, it's like posts about what's going on with fellowships and fellowship announcements and due dates and, like, hey, has anybody heard who's getting interviews and stuff like that. So yeah, it's absolutely beneficial. I don't live in LA and I used it.
I'm pretty sure I'm in it too. So
I think
um
like 17,000 people are in it. It's very
this person is asking, do you have any insights on the Screencraft Writers Fellowship or the Blacklist Fellowships?
I'm sorry, I don't no, I mean, I've heard of them. I don't know anyone that's ever done them, unfortunately. So I can't give any insight.
Can you give any insight into the types of prompts that they will ask about for the personal essays?
Oh boy. Sorry, no, that just got recorded. I just made that dumb face. Now it's like people saw it and it's gonna be on YouTube. Please forgive me. I can't remember what they've been in the past. If you go on Reddit and go in their archive, those individuals will have archived what those questions are. Some of them really are as basic as, like, use 250 words to write your personal essay, or 200 words, or 1,500 characters. Um, okay, wait, I remember one. NBC Universal had one last year that was like, this is paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, what's a show that, or what's a piece of art you've engaged with that impacted you? Now I will tell you, I did not talk about going to a museum. I talked about a TV show that I super liked. I mean, like, read the code. But that was an example of one of the personal essays from NBC last year.
Great. So we have a question here. Would you consider additional credentials and skills like history research a bonus on resumes? Michael has a BA in history, which has been helpful for researching his own historical works, but he doesn't know if that would make a difference on his actual resume.
100%, Michael, you absolutely 1000% should include that. Like, that, bring all of the cool things about yourself into that work. Like, I have one friend who's a journalist and that was on her resume. I have one friend who was a paramedic and that was on her resume. So, like, include that cool stuff about you that no one else is going to have.
Um, How was your transition from psychology to TV in terms of building momentum, your skill set, and portfolio to apply to fellowships? What steps did you take?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, okay. So allow me to wax poetic for just a moment on this, but I actually was just kind of talking about this with my partner because um after I won Sidewrite, and then like that script also I think was like, it like placed in a couple other competitions. Um, and I remain like quite proud of it. It was the first script I ever wrote. And then these producers were like, "We love your work. We want to option it." And I was like, "Oh my God, I've made it. I'm going to be famous and rich. Like, this is finally like the thing psychology could never offer me." I would just mostly take the rich part. I didn't even need the fame. Um, and then guess what? Does anyone think that that happened? Or do you think that they were predatory sharks that tried to give me $1 for my award-winning script? Okay, it was B. All right. Like, and that was like devastating. And then like I would, place in a contest here and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm in the, top 10% of the Nickel Fellowship." And one of my mentors says, "When that happened to me, my phone was ringing off the hook. Like, people are gonna want this script." I got goose egg calls, not a one, not a freaking one. And so like and you all know this because you live it, like that, like you're putting yourself out there and you're writing these super personal things that you're proud of, and you're just thinking like, what is gonna get me over the hump? Um, and you feel like, oh, I'm right there, I'm reaching, I'm right there. And then like it doesn't quite happen. But here's the thing, all of that is the journey to getting there, and like, um, and so like I for a long time I was like, once I get a fellowship, that's it. I've made it. No, I haven't. I have not staffed on a show. I don't have an agent. They are not knocking down my doors, and no one's gonna hustle harder for me than me, So what has the transition been like? It has just like any transition. It has been characterized not by steady progress, but by a lot of starts and stops and waves. And there have been times in the last 5 years, like I took my first writing class of like 5 years ago. In those 5 years, there have been times where I've been very focused on writing and had the opportunity to do a lot of writing. And sometimes the psychology, I'm still a professor actually. So I had to make some transitions from practice to teaching so that I would have the time to write. Um, and sometimes that stuff like is really forward on me. We just started a new semester, so like I haven't been able to write as much. um so the transition has been characterized by starts and stops, um which I think is true for a lot of people that are transitioning careers, but it's all part of like getting to your goal. It's, if you can look backward and think about like every one of those steps, even when they didn't pay off, was part of like getting to where you ultimately need to be. That's maybe a healthy way to think about it.
Great.
$1 for an option. I'm mad about it all over again.
This person is asking, they're a new writer and they just want to know some tips about growing your own confidence in writing.
Well, okay. How do you grow your confidence in writing? Um, I mean, first and foremost, keep at it. Um, and here is one thing that I will tell you that I learned from notes early on. Some notes are going to be great, and some notes are going to suck, and you do not have to take every note because you know what's good and you know what's not a good note. So I recall the first writing group that I was in, they like made it sound exclusive and you had to apply. Um, and I was like, I was in there and I was like glad to be there. And it was, by the way, with a script that had already won Sidewrite. Okay. Like I knew it wasn't like garbage. And it is a legal thriller. And this guy was like, "I don't really think that this would happen in a courtroom." And I was like, "Oh, I don't really think you've testified at 37 trials, but okay." Um, and I was like, but then I was like, "Oh, well, I've written something unrealistic and this is stupid." And then I was like, "Wait a minute. This guy says, first off, you like it, and second off, other people like it. So you have to decide when you are growing into being a writer what you're going to listen to and what you're going to ignore." Now, the trick is to not ignore everything, because the other, like the flip side of that, is to be legitimately open to notes. So, like, if you are, and this is a question we all have to ask ourselves critically, if you are at a place where the only thing you can hear is how brilliant you are not ready to grow as a writer. If you are at a place where you can like put a copy of the script for The Social Network next to yours and say, I can see that mine is not as good and I want to get to this point, then you are ready to grow as a writer. Like, so that comes incrementally. That comes from like reading a lot of scripts and then like putting in a cool turn of phrase and being like, yeah, Aaron Sorkin would like that. I didn't copy it off him. Like, I just came up with that. And it comes like in fits and starts, just like progress, but you have to know what notes to take and what to ignore, but you also have to be extremely open to taking notes. And as your skill grows, your confidence will grow. I hope that was an okay answer.
This person is asking, how did you balance your tough childhood and some traumas with your interest in TV during the interview and essay portions? And their concern is about being too like dramatic or
I'm not, here's why. Okay. I'm not going to regale all of you nice people with my childhood. It is unusual, is what I will say. And I went whole hog. I had like mentors and friends who were like, are familiar with my strange upbringing. And and they were like, well, I mean, it's really like your origin story. Like that's actually what led you to forensic psychology ultimately, or becoming a clinical psychologist and a forensic psychologist, and why you want to write and why you write the stuff you write. You need to talk about it. That it wouldn't be authentic to you if you didn't talk about it. And I'm going to tell you that is my partner making dinner, and the fire alarm is going off. Forgive me. Our house is not burning down. He is just burning the pork tenderloin. The You probably just heard me say that. He's mad. But I told a very deeply personal story, and the program director, I'm not kidding you, and she said, "Oh, I don't really know what to ask you after that." And I thought I had like just bungled the whole thing. I thought I was done, but I was not, because another executive said, I think, what she means is that like it is so unusual that we meet someone who has such a clear vision of like how their early life experiences contributed to who they are today and why they write what they write and why they have such a clear understanding of who they are. And so if that is true for you, and like you've had like difficult familial or traumatic childhood experiences or even adulthood experiences that contribute to your unique worldview, and it is essential for them to know it because that is how you present your authentic self, and that's like what you're going to bring to the program and what you're going to bring to a writer's room, then my advice honestly is to lean in to the extent that it is like comfortable for you. Don't let it ever, like there's certainly like, and look, like if you are like me, when you run into people who just have questions because they're curious and like what an oddity, someone who's, like XYZ weird family stuff happened. And when you're being treated like an oddity or a sideshow, but that has not ever been my experience with any of the executives or representatives I've ever met with. They are like legitimately curious, interested people who want to get to know you and know your story. So if it is comfortable and feels safe for you, I say lean into it.
Okay, and we have, is it more important to have a unique voice or a super strong structure?
Well, I mean, I would say like I can't compare those because you absolutely have to have both. Um, TV is about structure. Um, there are I was at a film festival a couple of years ago, not Sidewalk. Sidewalk, people like this don't go to Sidewalk. I was at a film festival where I met these guys who like you guys have all met too. And they like clearly are not focused on getting to know people. They're just there to network and like see who can do them favors. You've all met them. are people like them. And they're like, I've written like 9 pilots in the last 3 years, and I'm really like Quentin Tarantino because I just make my own rules. And I just love like action movies and Tarantino and like, shut up. I'm like, nobody's interested in that. Like, look, if you turned in a draft that looked like a Tarantino script, I'm here to promise you that no one's going to look twice at it. Um, Quentin Tarantino is a wonderful filmmaker. He has a particular approach to structure and a very unique voice that is individually his. But the way that he got there, the way that anybody with a unique individual voice gets there, and who kind of breaks the rules of structure, the way they get there is by mastering the rules of structure and then understanding what they can play with. So I don't, the way I would answer that question is to say, like, anybody that says like one over the other is, I think, is being disingenuous, that you must be a master of both. And you know, when you read those scripts, like, if you haven't read the pilot for The Americans, it's one of my favorites. Or if you haven't read the pilot for Ozark, those are excellent examples of prestige dramas that don't have the act breaks, for example, structured into their scripts, but you know that structure is there. You can feel it. So even if it feels like this freeform thing, it's not. It is still structured like a traditional episode of television. It is in a prestige format, and the voice is unique and jumps off the page at you. So I would say you have to 100% have both.
Okay, does anyone have any questions that you wanted to come off mic for and not? Oh, here's another one in the chat. If you
Okay.
have a question that you want to actually say, raise your hand and then we'll put you in the queue. Are act breaks still a thing? I keep including them just to show I know where they should be, but a lot of scripts, especially for streamers, don't anymore.
Who asked that question? Can I ask?
Jenny.
Jenny, good job. Keep those act breaks in there. Okay. I am pro act breaks. I love act breaks. I will tell you that here's how I think you should do it. This is how my friends and colleagues do it. Keep those act breaks in there until it's submission time. And then if you're doing like a streaming show like The Boys, for example, their scripts don't have the act breaks in it. But when you write it, write to the act break, leave that act break in there until you're ready to submit that draft, so that you're writing to the act break, so that you are working toward that big moment that's going to keep us going. And here's the other thing. I remember being in a class less than a year ago where the instructor, who was wonderful, said, don't worry about act breaks. Nobody uses them anymore. Nobody cares. Except, who knows what's happening with HBO's content now? And and a lot of Warner Brothers content, and a lot of stuff that's going to Amazon Freevee, that used to be IMDb TV and Pluto TV. They're going to add supported models. And you know what a commercial is? It's an act break. So like, you should know where those act breaks come, because if you don't know where they are, the executives will put them in for you. So why not just write to them in the first place? Like, yes, take them out of your draft if it's a show that doesn't use them, but absolutely have those act breaks in there. Always write to act breaks. I am pro act break.
I've been watching a lot of movies on freemium channels, and they'll put a commercial and something that wasn't designed to have commercials in it. So
yeah. And so like, if you design it to have the commercials, well, now like the people who are seeing it are still going to be able to enjoy it and not be like, oh, that was jarring. That's a weird place for a commercial. They can just enjoy it because like you knew it was coming.
All right, Michael.
Hi. Well,
Hi,
question that just popped up was when developing so I'm writing a couple pilots right now with ideas for series as they go. But when it comes to writing pilots, what do you consider to be a good balance of laying seeds for further plot developments versus satisfying start to finish narrative conclusions within the pilot?
So, I mean, if you're writing an original pilot, like you have, you've nailed the things that you need to do. If you are writing a pilot for a new series, you need to land 2 planes, actually probably 3. I mean, like hundreds, but like the 3 big ones I'm talking about right now. You need to tell a complete story from beginning to end that is going to show emotional growth for your protagonists, that they start in one place and they end in another. And you have to plant the seeds for their season arc and their series arc. And like, And frankly, you need to know, like I say all the time, my mentors have taught me this, you must know how that show is going to end when you write the pilot, because that's the only way you can seed it in. So I think you're also using the right terminology, that like you want to seed it. It's just like little bits here and there that's going to like tell you what's happening in the future. While also still telling a full story. So like I tend to think that like in your first draft, just get the story down. Get, your 5 acts plus teaser story in place, track that emotional journey. And then on future passes, it's probably a good idea to start laying in the seeds for what's going to happen in the future. That's how I approach it. And I think like the most important job you have is telling a complete story beginning to end. Your secondary job is showing that you can seed in ideas for a future season and series.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this Jenny's question in the chat, and then we'll do Jamil, and that will be our last question. So Jenny's asking about writing a synopsis for fellowship applications when instructions are not specific, pilot synopsis or series.
Okay. Here's what I would say. If it's not specific, email them. My experience, and so I don't want to weigh in because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. And sometimes they change, they may change rules year to year. Just email them, because every time that I've ever emailed with a clarification, I get a response within 24 hours. That's super helpful. So always reach out to them. Don't think that they're like scary folks. Like they want to help you succeed. So if you're not sure if it should be a pilot synopsis or a series synopsis, email them and ask what they want.
Okay, great. And Jamil?
Hi, Troy.
Hi, Jamil. How are you?
Good. My question is about not feeling ready, and like, would it be better in terms of like polish, right? Is it better to just start applying even if you know that like, it's not as polished as it should be, just to get a roll on, or hold on to this like pilot until it's polished and you know that you have a better chance, and then start it a year later or whatever?
Okay. That is an excellent question. And
Oh, and Lindsay says hi.
Oh, hi. Is she with you right now? Jamila and I know each other. And her lovely friend Lindsay is in the WB program with me, and she is just a lovely, lovely woman. So I love Lindsay. So I have done both things. I alluded to sending something that wasn't ready to NBC. I felt because I had one draft that I was like super proud of, and then one that that definitely wasn't ready because they needed 2 originals, and then I didn't advance there. And so like I just erred on the side of like, okay, that one was a calculation. I was like, they open this up with 20 days to apply. Lots of people are going to be in my shoes, so I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go crazy. So I think that there is some value to submitting it. Also, if you are thinking purely in terms of programs that track your progress, and they see that like one year you got like a 7 out of 10 and the next year you got a 9 out of 10, they see really big growth, that could help you. As far as like waiting until something feels ready, I understand that perspective too. I think one risk that we all have as writers is if you wait till you're ready, you're never ready. And like you'll keep reading it and you'll be like, oh, this could be better, or like you'll like send it to the blacklist and you'll get a 7 and you thought you were going to get a 9, and you're like on the floor like, oh, I'll never, like no one will ever like my work, or and so I mean, so that's the other risk of waiting till you think it's ready, is that it's really easy to never take the risk in applying. So if it were me, I would say get it out there, and and then get it out there, get it submitted. I mean, like, don't submit a first draft. I don't think you would. I don't think anybody here would. But like, get it out there, see what happens. And as soon as that May deadline is over for the last one, like May 31st, I think is Disney, get to work on next year's submissions. And because it is a grind, and it's going to be a grind for a few years, but it's good practice for when you are writing on shows. Because when you're not like in a writer's room, your agents are going to have you developing new shows. and you're going to have to constantly be turning work out. So it's a good habit to get in right now. And Jamil, if you need notes, just send me an email, of course.
On mute.
Okay.
You think after 3 years I'd know what buttons to press, but clearly I don't.
Nobody does.
Well, so thank you everyone for being here. We really are happy to have you and to have shared this information with you. Troy, would you like to talk a little bit about next month and how that's going to be different from what we had here tonight?
Sure. So I think what Jessica and I had talked about is next month, it's really going to be like question focused. So what I would really like to do next month is everyone who's in here who remains interested, take the 3 or 4 weeks between now and the next session, maybe start working on those applications. Take a look at the archive stuff if it's not released yet. Come to that session with your questions. And we can get really nitty gritty with more question kind of stuff. And you know, depending on like feedback that I get or Jessica gets, I may tailor some of it to like personal essay things, because I think that's the biggest stumbling block. That's the place where people feel the least prepared and need the most guidance. So then we can maybe even get like a little more in depth about personal essay writing. Now that we've covered the basics, we won't go over that stuff again. So next time it's going to be more of an advanced discussion.
And that session is $10. I just put the link in the chat if you would like to attend it. And that one will not be recorded, so you can feel free to answer some of your more nitty gritty specific questions to you that you want to protect your IP on. But I think, and as always, you can also email me if you have any questions, or if there's something you you know, are planning on coming and there's something specifically you want Troy to be able to prep a little bit, please reach out to either of us about that. And thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, thank you everybody for your phenomenal questions. Good luck with your applications.